Hi, welcome to Southern Girl in the City. My name is Dominique Duarte, and I am a singer actor currently living in Brooklyn, New York. Today's video is going to reflect on the challenges of being a black performer in the arts. um, as I become an adult, I have learned that being a black artist or just being a black person in general is it brings a lot of it brings a lot of challenges. And it's funny because I don't even think that that was my viewpoint growing up, because I thought as long as I work hard, as long as I try hard, as long as I do this and that, things are going to happen. And it's like not always the case. I think that we are a little bit at a disadvantage in a lot of areas. I mean, you can overcome those obstacles and struggles, but you're no matter what industry you are in, I do think there are going to be challenges. Um, so, one of the things that I think could help a black artist or a person who's a performer is to find other black artists to have a community with. My very first professional job was The Color Purple at Playhouse on the Square. And through that musical, I was able to find a community that I'm still in contact with. Um, and I don't know if I would be in New York City today if I hadn't connected with those people. And I'm still in contact with them. I think that seeing their trajectory also gave me a clue that our trajectory is going to be different. A lot of them started later than most white people do in theater. And a lot of this time, I'm going to say white people, but theater is diverse. It involves other minorities, but for the most part, it is still, even in 2025, a pretty predominantly white industry. I think most industries are predominantly white. There's no question of that. Most of the plays, the musicals, everything was written by white people. And there are black plays, there are black musicals, but they're not, considering how large the repertoire is, it's still a very small amount compared to as a whole. Most of the musicals and plays are written by white playwrights. Um, Male white playwrights, because I think too females also maybe do not have as much of a catalog either, and that no matter what color they are. But finding a community is so essential in anything you do. But when you find people who are also black artists, they can understand you at a level that other people can't. I think that I've met wonderful. I've always felt supported in any cast that I was in, whether it was all white or all black. I did. However, I do realize that a lot of white people cannot relate to being a black performer. They, and it's not because they're tone deaf. I think some might be, but a lot of them aren't. I just, as I've gotten older and I've experienced more life, I've just realized that a lot of white people just don't, they're not able to see the perspective of a black person because they're not living my experience, which is not bad, I guess. Like, um, if you're only around other white people or mostly other white people, it is going to be very challenging for you to relate to people who are minorities. Um, One of the things that I always believe is that if white people and black people and Hispanic people and Asian and Indian and everyone else would spend more time with one another on a deeper level, then maybe we would understand each other better and understand each other's perspectives. I have mostly been around white people, and so I have learned that for them, their interaction with minorities was very limited. So it's not like they're trying to always be tone deaf. However, I know that you can Google things, I know that you can learn, I know that you can research, but a lot of the times, unless you are zoning in on that specifically, that specific thing to research, you're not thinking to look it up. You're not thinking to research it. If you're only around other white people, you just aren't going to know. You aren't going to know their experience. For me, I think that as an adult, most of my friends have been black, mainly because I'm not really sure why, to be honest. I did have a lot of white friends in school. I still have some white friends, but it compared to what I had when I was younger, a good chunk of the friends who have sustained with me, who have been friends with the longest, have been black. I don't know why that is, because technically I feel like I should have the same amount of friends no matter their color. But it just seems like the black friends tended to maintain the relationship more. I just think that black and white people have such a different adult life. Most of my white peers, they were married very young, and so we don't relate in that area. A lot of black women tend to be single, but actually a lot of my black friends are married, and I have maintained relationship with them, so I don't know. I don't really know. Um, I feel like maybe they have more of a sense of community within their own family, and a lot of black people maybe not always, maybe they don't have that so much. So they have to find it with friends, and so I'm not really sure how to explain that one, but just finding a community of other black artists, because they will understand you on a different level. Um, because you tend to have a similar upbringing, a similar um, way of talking, a similar way of knowing culture. I mean, one of the things that I remembered in college was that I would bring up a lot of things that in my culture were pretty common knowledge, but for them it was completely foreign. There are singers that I listened to, like Jill Scott and NDRE. They had never heard of them, and I was just like, or I remember my friend Daniel and I were talking about the Showtime at the Apollo and how that was such a big thing on the weekend that you would watch with your family, and like crickets. Okay, like this was completely foreign to my white peers. Um, Living Single was something that a lot of people had never heard of. The show. Um, of course, in the black community, that was one of the main shows we watched, Martin and Living Single, growing up. But yet, from the white community, they have no clue about those shows. They may now, but they definitely did not when we were in college or when I was in high school. Crickets. Didn't know. And it's not their fault. Like, they can't help that they don't know that the black culture. And then, too, I have to think of it from the perspective of a black person in Hispanic culture, because I have been around more Hispanic people since I moved to New York, and I didn't know their culture at all, and I still am learning new things that I didn't know. And I mean, I could research Hispanic culture. I could have googled it, but I wasn't around it, so I wasn't thinking, "Oh, I should probably find out about this person's culture." Like, it wasn't something that came up. And now that I'm around it more, I'm around more Hispanic people, or I'm teaching kids who are of Hispanic culture, I'm learning more things. But it would not have been a priority for me if I were not around kids of Hispanic descent, or more people who speak Spanish and who are from the Dominican or from Puerto Rico or in like Ecuador. I wouldn't have a reason to. In Tennessee, how many Ecuadorians or Dominicans was I running into? Like zero. I mean, we had a lot of Mexican people, but there wasn't really that much diversity in Tennessee. It was either all black community, all white community, maybe all Hispanic community that was Mexican. But other than, even then, like I rarely remember too many people that I encountered in high school who were of Hispanic descent. So For white people who are only around other white people, they're not going to think, oh, I need to research the black culture. It just isn't on their radar. Unless they happen to be a friend of someone who, maybe that by being a friend of someone who's black, or maybe by them being a teacher in an inner city community, maybe then they are more driven to learn about black culture. But black artists, they just can relate to you in a way that a lot of white people can't. And in theater, when you go to auditions, most of the people are going to be white, unless you're auditioning for the Lion King or Once on This Island. Most of the people at the audition are white. That just is what it is. It's going to be a predominantly white industry. Most industries, I think even in corporate, are going to be predominantly white. It just is what it is. But finding that community and having a safe space where you can talk about your color, because that's another thing I learned with a lot of white people that I've been around over the years, that talking about race for a lot of them is very uncomfortable. So in a black community of artists, I can discuss my race, I can discuss my struggles, I can discuss things, and I'm not going to get, oh, why are you bringing up the race card? Or why are you talking about that? Like, what is it? In a community of black artists, you can discuss your struggles and you're not going to get judged for it. And guarantee you, they're going to be able to relate to you. So the first thing is finding a community. The second thing is to learn your assets and strengths. Know what you're good at and hone in on those skills. For me, I'm not a triple threat. I am a double. I'm really a singer actor who can move if I work on my choreography. But I have taken dance class after dance class after dance class after dance class, and I have improved, but I am not a dancer. And at this point, I'm 35, and I don't think they're going to expect me to be kicking my leg high in the air at this point. But maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, I think maybe they might still expect me to be a strong mover. But by 45, 50, 60, yeah, at that point, I think you are the singer-actor. Your role is singer-actor. And I think one of the challenges about being a black actress or actor, if you are not a strong dancer, you're kind of at a disadvantage in your youth, because most black performers are going to be cast in the ensemble. Because most of the lead roles tend to be portrayed by white characters. Now, they are doing a little bit more colorblind casting, but that is recent. We're talking like George Floyd recent. Like that, until diversity became something that people really wanted to shine a light on, that was recent. That was in the last 5 years. But before that, people were not really talking about colorblind casting that much. Rarely ever. There wasn't much diversity. And now that I feel like that George Floyd incident was so far now, 5 years out, that I think that people are getting more complacent, and I think that they're not as diverse. Like, I have been researching shows that they're doing this season. A lot of them have shows that I can't do. There's no role in there for me. And it's becoming less and less and less and less and less every year. I'm noticing less and less and less and less diversity in the season. I think initially, because it was so fresh and it was right on the forefront, everybody was like, diversity. Yes, this is what we're going to do. But that is starting to go back to the status quo. Because I understand that talking about race is uncomfortable for a lot of people, but what people in America have to realize is that because our country is so diverse and we do have so many different cultures in it, it's hard not to discuss it. And avoiding it is not solving the problem. Avoiding it is just making you comfortable with the way things are, and that you don't have to take any accountability for it. But a lot of the times, I think white theaters will say, well, we don't have any black people that audition. Well, I could see that if you're only seeing that a theater is mostly doing white shows every season, you'll be shocked if you did see that there was a black show on the roster. So even if you, a lot of the times it's not even on your radar to even look at that theater because you are so used to seeing that they are only doing white productions. Um, so a lot of the times they don't know. A lot of times we don't know that they're doing a black musical this time. Oh, okay, that's great. Didn't know. A lot of the times I'm finding out after the audition has already passed. Um, so there's that. I mean, learning your assets. What are you strong at? I'm a really strong singer. So I try to find legit musicals. But legit musicals are becoming farther and farther away from legit musicals. Most of the shows on Broadway are pop musicals at this point. So I am trying to lean more into singing more pop music. When I was growing up, I did sing more pop. But then once I found my legit sound, I felt like that was where my strength lies. Had I been a white girl with the voice that I have, I do think more doors would have opened. I do feel like me having a legit sound is still not as helpful as I would like it to be. And was a girl who posted on TikTok about how she wanted to be Glinda. And I remember this was since I've been in New York. I remember there being a post for Wicked because when they do the breakdowns of auditions, they have what color they're looking for a lot of the times. They will say that they're looking for Caucasian, they're looking for black, they're looking for Asian, they're looking for Indian, they're looking for specific race. In Wicked, this was like in 2017, 2018. I remember the breakdown was that Alphaba could be any race. But Glinda was specifically, this is on a backstage breakdown of Wicked, said Caucasian. So this girl who posted on TikTok about how she wanted to play Glinda never thought it'd be possible. Understandable, because a few years ago, that role was always associated as being white. Like you couldn't play Glinda if you were a person of color. Even though maybe you could sing the role. I remember thinking, I don't understand. I feel like comedic wise, I can maybe pull that role off, but I don't really know because I'm also not the most ingenue esque in appearance. So that has also been its own challenge because even though there are black people who are starting to break barriers, there's still more black people who are more socially acceptable to play the parts, who are ingenue, who are, have more Eurocentric features. As a black person, they are black, but they have more Eurocentric features, which does make them more marketable to play certain parts. When I look like a black girl, a black woman, and when you do look like a black woman, you kind of, it's almost like you always have to sing like a certain way. They expect that you're going to come belting, you're going to come singing like Aretha, you're going to come singing with this type of voice, and they're not expecting, oh yeah, you could sing legit. And that's his own thing. I know that legit is my strength, but I'm also having to lean more into my other voice because that's what I guess is expected of me, is to sing with a pop sound. It's not impossible for me to do. It's just not my it's not where I'm showcased the best vocally. Secondly, taking those vocal lessons, taking the acting classes. That's one thing that I wish I had put more emphasis on, is taking the singing lessons, taking the acting classes. I just, financially, that has been a challenge because I have been struggling financially my entire adult life. So it's really hard for me to invest in that. But I'm trying to get to the point where within the next few years, I'll be able to do that. But just working on your strengths, working on your legit sound, working on your pop sound, working on your singing voice, because that's your strength. You know that that's what sets you apart. I also have a very quirky personality, which can also find its own niche because Tabitha Brown had been struggling for years in her career, but then she found her space during the pandemic, and now she is in children's television, and she's doing writing books, and she's doing Target ads and everything. So I mean, the thing about it, she's having products in Target. But Tabitha Brown is definitely somebody who, honestly, I very much relate to because I think she would have been a person who I think would have been hard to cast. Mainly because when I went to AMDA, one of my professors told me that he thought I was very talented, but he said I was not going to be an easy person to cast in a show. And I think because I don't fit into cookie cutter type. I sing legit, but I'm quirky, and I'm more comedic than I am really dramatic. I mean, I can do drama, but I think I have better comedic timing than I do drama. And finding your place, like finding your where you fit. And Tabitha has figured that out, but it took her years to figure that out because she had been acting since she was very young. Like probably when I started acting, she was starting acting when she was like 18, 19. So knowing that your trajectory is also going to be later. And so that's the next one, is not to compare yourself to your white counterparts. My white peers are going to have a completely different life. And I don't care if I chose to be a teacher or if I chose to be in corporate, it would not have mattered. My life would have been different. I would have gotten married later. That was one thing. I was not going to have as much of a support system from a young age as in the way that they do. Also, a lot of minority communities prefer you to do something like that is more of substance, or in their view of substance. So a minority family is going to be a lot more supportive if you're a doctor or a lawyer or you do something in corporate than if you decide I want to be a performer. But in the white community, I feel like they get just as much support to be a performer as they do in other areas. And the lack of support system, it does make it very difficult to pursue the performing arts because it's not impossible. And in a lot of ways, I have had a lot of support when it comes to friends. When it comes to having people to talk to, when it comes to that type of thing. But having that person there, a lot of my black peers in the arts are married. I would say half and half. Like some of them aren't, some of them are. I think that by having that spouse there to really be there for you when you are having those days when you just feel like this isn't coming together. That's one thing Tabitha Brown did have. She had a husband. They've been together since they were in middle school, really, but they've been married forever. And I think that male support or support can help you during those times when you don't believe in yourself, but this other person believes in you. And a lot of black women in particular really do not have that. They don't have someone in their corner on a regular basis. Maybe they have friends. Maybe they have, girlfriends or whatever like that are real cool. But for the most part, having that person who's there with you every day and who's seeing you go through the ins and outs of the industry in the way that Tabitha and her husband have been together, that is a real true blessing. Because not having a partner and trying to pursue the arts is extremely isolating and is really lonely. I'm just gonna be honest. In an industry that's gonna reject you probably more than your white peers. And I know the white peers have their own struggle because let me tell you, going into an audition and almost everybody's white, I don't know how the casting directors do it. Because when I say that most of the women that go in that audition have a similar appearance and a look, I'm just like, I don't know how they do it. And then they all belt. A majority of them belt. Some of them are legit, but a lot of them belt. I'm just like, I don't know. Casting directors have it hard because they're basically choosing a pool of about 100 or more white women and maybe 10, 20 black women. So they definitely have their own struggle in that regard. They have a lot more competition. I mean, even in the show that I just did in Pennsylvania, the girl who got the lead in the show, I think she had so many people who she competed against to get that part. So I mean, they definitely have a more competition, but there's also more opportunities for them. In every show, there's at least 4 or 5 parts for them. And then for a black woman, there's usually probably one role, if that, sometimes 0. A lot of the times there's like one role. Unless we're talking about Lion King, Hamilton, or The Color Purple, most of the time there is one black part. And a lot of the times it's a stereotypical role. You're playing a maid, you're playing a servant, you're playing a slave, you're playing some historical figure. Like, you don't have a lot of diversity in parts. So then you also are not getting as much opportunity to showcase what you can do. Like comedy, I think is something I'm pretty strong at. As a matter of fact, one of the women who wrote a musical that I did a workshop for, she said to me, you really need to look into comedy. And I didn't even have many lines in that workshop. But she's like, you got to look into comedy. But I'm like, I don't know how to get into comedy because it's most of the time, even in SNL history, as long as that show's been on, there are very few black women who have been on that show. And it's hard to break into comedy because I feel like a lot of the times the black story in a musical or a play is very heavy. It's heavy. And that makes sense because a lot of the times, a lot of the plays and musicals are based off of historical things, which historically black women did go through a lot, and black people period went through a lot. So you kind of are put into always doing drama or always doing a serious part. So and then the other thing is writing your own material. A lot of people say that. They're like, just write your own stuff. I'm like, I'm not saying that that's not a great idea. I think writing your own stuff is wonderful. And I think that's what opened Whoopi Goldberg's career all the way open, is because she wrote a one woman show. But that also is not an easy task to write your own material, to produce your own material. It costs money. And a lot of white people can have someone give them some money. I'm not saying millions here. We're talking like a lot of white people have inheritances that I didn't even think would have inheritances. So I'm like, they have maybe a small inheritance that isn't huge, but it's something. A lot of the times when they want to start a business, they have a parent who can give them a decent amount of money. Like, I'm not talking like millions, but we're talking at least a few thousand. They can just, oh, mom and dad, can I have $5,000, $10,000? Oh, here you go. To start your own business. That is not the case in the black community. We don't have that type of wealth. And like, maybe there are exceptions to that, but it's rare. In my own family alone, I mean, there are only 2 relatives I know who have an inheritance. Maybe 4. Eventually. But people in my family don't have an inheritance. They're just not a thing. But in the white community, I don't think a lot of people realize that is a very common thing. But I know that there's plenty of white people who are poverty stricken too. We know that they are too. However, the good majority of them have some type of wealth. It's not necessarily on a large scale, like, oh, everyone's a millionaire. No. But they have enough wealth where if they want to start a business or they want to have an investment in a project like a film or movie, they can get that support. So for a black person to produce something the way Tyler Perry and them do, that is mind-boggling to me, because he had to really work hard for his, I don't know, there's a lot of criticism about his writing, but like he had to really build from the ground up, because he didn't have an inheritance. He didn't have a family member that could just help him. He did all of that from the ground up. And also, to produce your own work requires people to invest in you, not just financially, but who's going to take a chance on you. And a lot of the times people are very hesitant to take a chance on a minority actress or actor, because they feel like they're not going to sell tickets, they're not going to get an audience, which we've learned is not true, because plenty of people will go see a black performer, but and always have, really, even when there were significant tensions with race in America, white people will go see the Temptations. They will go see Sammy Davis Jr. Like, people will go see black performers. But for some reason, producers and most of the producers, most of the directors, most of the people who are in power do not believe that we sell. So there's that aspect of casting that, no matter how talented you are, is a hurdle that you have to overcome. So just not comparing yourself to your white peers, because they're going to have a completely different career than you. They just are. They're going to get their equity card sooner. A lot of them before 30, before 25 even, have their equity card. Most of my black peers did not get their equity card until they were over 30. Sometimes close to 40. It's very easy. It's a lot easier for white people to get an equity card, because a lot of the times they're getting cast in more productions because there's more opportunity for them. It's not impossible as a black person to get an equity card. We see it happens, but it is harder because there are just less opportunities. And then finding multiple streams of income. As I said, a lot of black women, you on your own. Like, if you are a singer actor, your work is in between. So you work, you don't, you work, you work, you don't work, you work, you don't work. You got to find something else. I have always had multiple streams of income. I've been in education. I have been in customer service. I have been a singer actor. I currently teach English online, and I am currently working on a blog and have had that blog for over 2 years, and I'm only going to start to monetize that this year for the first time. So having multiple streams of income is not optional. If you are a black artist, you cannot just have one stream of income. Because if I had only relied on education, I would have been in trouble. Because education has so much going on with that me just recently quitting my job is not a huge problem, because I still work in customer service. I can still teach English online. Shoot, I can even go in the subway stations and start performing, which I'm thinking of doing. So you have to have multiple streams of income. And this is really for anybody. This is whether you're black, Indian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Everybody who is in the performing arts, you have got to have multiple streams of income. If you want to get into voiceover work, if you want to get into singing, if you want to do acting, if you want to do any of it, you must have multiple streams of income. Do not be the person who's sitting in their mother's basement because you want to pursue a career in the performing arts and you are not doing anything other than performing, because it's just not sustainable. Now, it's going to take time for you to get to the point where maybe your acting is providing for you full time. And as a black performer, it's going to take you longer. Case in point, I think I know one of my voice teacher introduced me to one of her friends who I think recently performed at the Met a few years ago. And I met him when I was a freshman in college, which was now almost 20 years ago. in 2009 would be 2029 would be 20 years. So he's had a very consistent career. His name is Kenneth Overton, and he has had a very consistent career in opera. But it is not. I mean, he's very clear about it. It ain't been easy. It's been very challenging. Um, and also, the black male actor has a different trajectory than the black female actor or performer, too. Because normally, black men are at a disadvantage in a lot of industries, but in this industry, it actually works to their advantage because they are more likely to colorblind cast roles with black actors males because of how small of a pool of black men there are in the arts. So because of that, they get a little bit more opportunities to open up. But black women being colorblind cast is still relatively new. Audra, I think, is the only black woman who I feel like really colorblind casting has been a lot of her career. But that's a rarity. She is an anomaly because LaShawne's has mostly only played black roles. I don't think that woman was ever colorblind casted. And she has had just as long of a career as Audra, but I think has had more of a, I want to say more of a struggle, but I'm sure it ain't been easy for Audra either. I think that the fact that LaShawne's and Audra are really the only big names I can think of that are black actresses in musical theater. Anika Noni Rose, but she kind of transferred more into TV and film. But she did star in theater. So I do think she also could be considered a success story of someone who's a singer-actor. Because a lot of black actresses start in TV and film first. They don't really always do the theater thing. We really are few and far and in between in the arts. I think performing period is hard for everyone. We know that. But as a black artist, you gotta find a community of other black artists who can relate to you. You got to really hone in and work on your assets and strengths and find your niche. You cannot compare yourself to your white peers because they have a different life. They just have a different life for many reasons. Doesn't mean you can't be friends with them. Doesn't mean you can't perform with them. Doesn't mean you can't be cordial with them. You can be besties with white people. I have plenty of friends who are white. However, will they ever truly understand my experience the way another black artist will? No, they can't. And I'm not going to fault them for it, though. But it just is what it is. And then the last thing, and this is really for anybody in the arts, you've got to find multiple streams of income. Find other things that you can be good at, that you can have a way to make income. If it means that you're working in customer service and you're babysitting, if it means that you're a nanny, you've got to find other ways of making money so that the reason why I stress this more for black artists is because we tend to lack financial support the most. So because of that, you really need to make sure that you have covered your behind financially. And I definitely haven't done myself any favors when quitting my education jobs, but some of it is because it's a lack of ethics at the job, and like I can't continue to work in environments that are not healthy for the kids, or not healthy for me, or not healthy for the other staff members. I'm not encountering that as much in customer service. I'm just not. So anyway, these are some of the challenges of being a black artist, and I think that it's not a woe is me, oh, No, I mean, I know that this is what I'm called to do. And I do know that once I really figure out my niche and really hone in on my skills and my strengths, I know that I will be successful as a performer. But I also know that my timeline is not going to be where my white peers' timeline is. And Tabitha Brown didn't really hit success until she's in her 40s. Even Esther Rolle didn't become famous until she was in her 50s. So I'm like, we have a different trajectory. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it just is. And this has been Southern Girl in the City, and I hope this helps. Have a lovely week. Enjoy. Bye.